There has been a changing of the guard at quarterback in New York for the Jets, but what will that mean for our redraft fantasy football teams as we enter redraft season? I have Rich Cooling, Dynasty Island over on X of the Fantasy Sanctuary, and Jets fan to join us to have a look through the state of the Jets and what that means for our fantasy lineups. But I guess, Rich, the most obvious place to start is the new man in town, the fancy quarterback who we've all been craving over the years, who just hasn't quite had a fair run of it yet. Where are you at on Justin Fields right now?
I guess as a Jets fan, I'm skeptical. I fully get it. I think it's the perfect low risk, high reward dart throw to take when you're a new regime. You don't want to commit to a rookie. For fantasy, I'm all in. This is a guy that when he's been on the field is an absolute fantasy cheat code. I mean, you look at the stats. Sophomore year, 19.7 points per game. 2023, 17.7 points per game. And then if you look at the 6 weeks where he was the starter, he averaged 18.8 points per game last year. And that was in an offense that was basically trying to kind of put shackles on him, not allow him to essentially be his kind of playmaking self. So, yeah, this guy, when he is allowed to run, he's going to be a complete cheat code. And I think that this Jets offense is going to be geared up around probably trying to run the ball more than any other team in the league this year. And I think Justin Fields is going to be a big part of that. So for me, yeah, I'm very, very excited about him as a fantasy option in 2025.
And when we say when he's been allowed to run, and obviously that's looking like what happened again, over the last 4 seasons, 43% of all his fantasy points have come across the ground. It just feels that when you've got a player who is guaranteed as your week one starter is, I think, one of the players where dual threat with his passing ability is maybe being a little bit generous, but still feels that for a QB with his ceiling is going at a little bit of a bargain, I'd say. So at the moment on Sleeper, QB 17, I've got him down as my QB 11 for fantasy actually. Where do you think I'm being a little bit too generous there, or would you agree he's going potentially in that QB sleeper range?
I think for me, it depends if you're playing one QB or Superflex. You know, I think that we talk about quarterback rankings as if they're all the same. But to me, the difference between Superflex and one QB is massive. If we're talking Superflex and I want a bit more security, I want a bit more solidarity, I think around QB 11 is about right. If we're talking one QB where I'm swinging for upside, you know, I've got other options on the waiver wire. If it doesn't work out, never mind. I'll be honest, outside of the top probably 5, I think I'd have Justin Fields around QB6. Like the floor's there, the ceiling's there. The Jets are going to give him the whole year. That, you know, it's not pennies they're paying him. It's 2-year, 40 million, 30 million guaranteed. Like that is real money they are paying him. The Jets want to see if he can be the long-term answer at quarterback. And yeah, people will, you know, slate on his passing ability. Let's not forget that he's going to get teamed up with his college receiver in Garrett Wilson, who, you know, they made music in Ohio State and did fantastically. So yeah, I think, look, it depends how you want to play. There are some people that will opt for safety and security at the quarterback position and not be willing to take a risk. If we're talking one QB, outside of the elite options, I'm swinging for the fences with Justin Fields. And if it's not worked out after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I can go to the waiver wire and I can pick up a Dak Prescott or Trevor Lawrence, anyone like that, because they're all going to be sat out there.
I'm really rooting for Justin Fields this season. He's a player that is so much fun to watch. Has given us some great fantasy games as well. So certainly after 2 interesting years of the Aaron Rodgers experiment, well, 1 really after the injury, it is going to be interesting to see what happens in New York. Before we move on to running back, though, please do give us a click below, subscribe, give us a like, and share as well. Check out all of our other deep dive content as we look through all 32 teams this offseason. Can we talk next to a player that I think disappointed? Is that a kind way to put it? Last season, ADP of running back 3 for Breece Hall last season, finished up as the RB16. And after that really solid 2023, and everyone was hoping for a repeat, if you bought him at ADP, which obviously most people will have done, was he a bust last year? And what are you looking at for this year, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, let's not beat around the bush. He was terrible last year. If you look at all the athletics measurements and everything like that, he was slower last year. He was less explosive. It was his worst year in terms of yards after contact. It was his worst year in terms of yards per attempt. He had 6 fumbles. He's only had 9 in his entire career. Like every single stat, it was his worst. And it's like, yeah, we can sit here and point fingers at the offensive line and the run game being poor and it being an Aaron Rodgers-led offense, which didn't fit Breece Hall and all this kind of stuff. But he was a significantly worse player last year than he was as a rookie and as a sophomore. And that's painful to add. Looking ahead to this year, it's a real question mark, isn't it? I've been on record saying I don't think Breece Hall finishes the season as a Jet. I think that he's going to get traded, whether that's in training camp, whether that's in the season. I just don't think with the contracts that are coming up with the Jets that they're going to be able to pay him. And I think that there will be a team that potentially is, a contender that could get Breece Hall for an early day 3 pick or something like that could view him as a potential chip that can push them over the top. So, yeah, I think for me, I'm very nervous about Breece Hall and where he's being drafted. The upside is there. Like this guy's he's probably one of 5 or 6 players that could finish as the RB1 overall. The combination of the receiving work, the Jets have improved the offensive line. We know that they're going to run the ball, as I was saying earlier when we were talking about Justin Fields. But there is significant risk there, and it comes back to that risk appetite. But for me, where he's going, we're talking late seconds at the moment in ADP. That's just a bit too rich for me.
I think with you raising those potential moves, well, now is a good time to point out we are recording on the 4th of July 2025. So if anything has changed and we've not seen, that is why. I think there's lots of buts, I think, with Breece Hall, because we say we've got all those question marks, but he is still in for a big workload. But Justin Fields could be taken away from that. But Justin Fields was second highest at checkdown rate last season as well. So there's so many different ways this could go. And I think that's why I agree at the current cost, there are other players I feel are less risky that I would prefer to be taken there. And he would have to drop for me to be interested. That is for sure. But he's got both ways he could go. We had such variation already. As you say, he is in with a shout of finishing very high and one of those that could finish his RB1. He could also be a player that even at current cost, we are massively disappointed by. If it doesn't work out for Breece Hall, how confident are you that the man sat behind him, Braelon Allen, could be in for a bigger workload? We saw 4.45 points per game last season. Yeah, that's not going to fill us with much hope. That RB51 not going to fill us with much hope. But he is still the youngest player in the NFL. So there's certainly room for growth and development there. And at the point he's being drafted, right at the end of redrafts, around 15, 16, could he represent the sort of player that you want to take an absolute dart throw on with your final picks of your redraft, fantasy draft, and see what happens in 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there should be no league where Braelon Allen goes undrafted. I think just the way the Jets are talking, the commitment sounds like for them to run the ball. I think there's a chance that even with Breece Hall fully healthy on the Jets and playing, that Braelon Allen could be in that kind of flex territory week in, week out. I think he's going to have some touchdown equity. Yeah, I'd love to see him used in the receiving game more. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be his bag all the time, but I think there is enough there that he could be fantasy relevant as the RB2. But if anything happens to Breece Hall, running back is, injury rate's 100%. If he does get traded, I think Isaiah Davis is still going to get worked in a little bit. I don't think it's going to be one of these where Braelon Allen sees like 80% opportunity share, but he would absolutely be a league winner because there is going to be the volume in the New York offense that's going to go through the running back position. If Breece Hall's gone, I think Braelon Allen's going to see the majority of that.
As we move to wide receiver then for the Jets, I'm not sure we get any more clarity. There's lots of question marks everywhere that we're talking at the moment. For Garrett Wilson, last year finished as wide receiver 10, drafts wide receiver 7, but 14.8 points per game. I think Ed and I were saying of Jerry Jeudy in the Browns show, who finished wide receiver 12. It was a year actually where just being on the field helps people get towards that top 12 situation rather than the points turning out. You've referenced already, we didn't get the Aaron Rodgers experience that we wanted. Justin Fields coming in with that connection. Are you thinking that we're going to see more from Garrett Wilson this year? Is he still representing that risk? I'm asking these questions because I really don't know, Rich. I'm not sure where I've made my mind up at all for Garrett Wilson. Can you shed any light for me, please?
I think, to be honest, it's going to be more of the same for Garrett Wilson. I think he's going to see, this is a guy that's seen over 130 targets every single year of his career. The last 2 years, he's cleared 150 targets. Like, the volume has always been there, but because of the inconsistent quarterback play, it's been pretty ugly. And I kind of feel like that's going to be the case again. Like, yes, Justin Fields has got a nice connection with Garrett Wilson. They played in college together. They're best mates. They, have apparently been thrown together constantly through the offseason. But Justin Fields still has accuracy concerns. Eyes still drop in the pocket. Like, there are still issues there. And I think that it's going to be one of these where I think at the end of the season, Garrett Wilson is going to be around that wide receiver 10 to wide receiver 15 mark. There's going to be some weeks where it really hurts and he's going to have 10 targets, 3 catches for 30 yards and not score a touchdown. But there will also be weeks where he has, 15 targets, 10 catches, 100 yards and a touchdown. Like, it's going to be boom bust. But I think the volume is just going to be so high because of the lack of other receiving options in this offense.
And obviously, when we look back at that really solid season that DJ Moore had with Justin Fields, we know that when Justin Fields has to rely heavily on someone, that receiver can get it done for fantasy. I think you're right, though. I think the next graph I'm about to put up is the reason why Garrett Wilson perhaps carries more appeal than other players going around that point. And it's the supporting cast on the depth chart. Alan Lazard, Tyler Johnson, Josh Reynolds. I mean, is there any excitement there at all? Alan Lazard, I suppose in theory you could draft him. In theory, he could do a lot of things. And I don't anticipate that we're going to be talking about Tyler Johnson or Josh Reynolds unless we're looking at desperation waiver pickups. If there's injuries, it's Wilson or bust, isn't it? Wide receiver, surely, for the Jets when it comes to fantasy.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking at any of these guys to put in any sort of managed league where you're having to select a lineup, just go and add somebody else. Go and add the 4th receiver on a better offense because it's just not gonna. There's not going to be enough volume going around for these guys to be fantasy relevant. I'm on record. I've said a couple of times in our Discord, maybe Alan Lazard in best ball leagues, just because I think he's going to have enough touchdown equity that he has potential to have spike weeks. If he has a 7-8 touchdown season, he's probably going to enter your lineup 4 or 5 times, which for the last round pick is worthwhile. And there's also the potential that he could get traded in the season, and that probably gives him a bit more spike in value. But yeah, I don't, in a managed league, I don't want to be touching any of these guys.
Well, that is probably throughout this series going to be the quickest we talk about any combination of 3 players. And there are no more to say, so I won't labour the point. Can we move on to our final player, and a player that I am genuinely really excited to watch through this season and beyond and see what happens? And that is Mason Taylor. Round 2 draft capital for a tight end is solid draft capital. Streaming potential is where I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking towards the end of this season. And the reasons I'm looking at that are some of the things we mentioned before already. I mean, I loved him pre-draft. He's landed in a situation where he is the clear tight end 1. He's in a situation where there aren't many other receivers that he's competing with when you're looking at the wide receiver depth chart. Fields loves the checkdowns, we've already said. So that could work out well PPR leagues for him. Could Taylor evolve into a streamable tight end in 2025? I think my worry is that even if he were getting 4 or 5 receptions a game, you're still potentially getting a tight end who's only going to get 7 to 9 points. And when you're looking at Pat Freiermuth last year, that's where my worry comes in. He had, in his games with Fields, averaged 4 receptions per game, averaged 8 yards per catch, 7.2 fantasy points in PPR. That's my worry for Mason Taylor more than anything, but is a player that I'm targeting heavily in Dynasty. Is he going to feature in our redraft leagues this year, do you think?
Potentially. I think this is ridiculous. We're having a fantasy show, and I'm now going to talk about the guy's blocking. But I think his blocking is the key to whether he's going to be fantasy relevant or not, because how he can adjust stepping up to the NFL in terms of his blocking capability is going to dictate how often he's on the field. I think if he can be 100% snap share guy and, is on the field every single down, then I think he's going to be fantasy relevant before the end of the season, just because being on the field every down, as we said, I don't like any of these other receivers. I think there's going to be enough volume there that he's going to be at least streamable week in, week out. However, if his blocking isn't at the position and we're having to rely on, Jeremy Rucker or Stone Smart even to come in and spell him, then I think that he can sit on waiver wires because he's not going to see the volume. He's not talented enough. As much as I'm a huge fan of his talent, he's not talented enough to be fantasy relevant on 40, 50% of snaps. So yeah, I do a write-up every week in season where I'm looking at snap breakdown, I'm watching the film, and he's definitely someone that's on my radar first couple of weeks to say, how often is he on the field and how's he holding up in the run game? Because to me, that's almost reliant on how useful he's going to be for fantasy.
And that's kind of in line with the final thing I'd written down from him in my notes, is that he's going to be on the waiver wire to start the season. We want to watch how that role evolves, and he's someone we certainly could be talking about a few weeks in. We know the tight end landscape is always risky. We know that from nowhere the last couple of years, everyone now is a fan of the rookie tight end and hoping they get the next Laporta or Brock Bowers. No, I don't think Mason Taylor has a clear route to that, but there is certainly a world where he finishes the season fantasy. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens there, and I'll be looking out for that blocking, as you have suggested, to see how much time he's seeing on the field. Well, thank you very much, Rich. That brings us to the end of our walk through the New York Jets lineup and roster for our redraft fantasy football leagues. If people would like to check out more of your content through the off season, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Dynasty Island on Twitter. You can find all of my work at the FF Sanctuary, YouTube. We got members only content in terms of all my Dynasty trade calculators and everything like that.
Wonderful. Well, as always, Rich, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. We look forward to chatting to you at some point again, either in the off season or in season. But for now, it's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Rich. So Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to Pestle and Ed of TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Instagram and Twitter.